over these many years, it's been suggested that we have to be divine scientists, divine alchemists, divine physicists, and divine psychologists. And over these last days, we could say that we've been practicing being the divine scientist by delving into esoteric inquiries, the first one being the mysteries that are hidden in plain sight until we no longer need to see by the light of existence. Where we are, what is this place when we are seeing without the aid of our sensory awareness, recognizing this is a permanency. We can no longer return to seeing in the way that it was before. And thirdly, how does this place and state of permanency relate to day-to-day life, the impermanency, the ever-changing world of sensory awareness, mind? So there's a story that tests this seeing, and it's a story about a young girl called Jubidah. Now, Jubidah was born to two simple beings in a village somewhere, and she was given her name because she was like the precious white cheese that was known in all of those parts, made from only the purest of ingredients. She was so beautiful and fair that she was used as an example for many things by the people around, saying, this or that is as beautiful as Jubidah. And of course, when Jubidah came to marriageable age, there were many suitors who came seeking her hand in marriage, but none of them were found to be acceptable. But there was a prince in a far-off land who had heard of Jubidah's beauty, and so he decided that he wanted her for his bride, no matter what. So knowing the fate of the many suitors who had come before, he sought the aid of an old crone to get her assistance to bring Jubidah to him to become his bride. Now this old crone used the ploy that she went to the village where Jubidah lived, stating that she was looking for a bevy of maidens to become what we would call the bridesmaids of her son's bride-to-be. Now it is known that young maidens always love weddings, and to be part of a wedding was to have the possibility that you yourself could be wed. So many of the young maidens in that place avidly agreed to accompany the old crone. And of course, Jubidah was one of those. So she went to her father to seek permission to accompany the other maidens and the old crone. And her father said, go and talk to your mother. So when it came to the mother said, go and talk to your uncle. But it seemed that the whole family came into agreement that Jubidah should be allowed to go with this old crone to be one of those bridesmaids. Now, as it happened, the group set out on the journey led by the old crone. But somehow, along the way, the group was joined by a Nubian slave, a woman, very black-skinned, we might say. But before setting out on this journey, Jubidah's mother gave Jubidah a blue stone, and telling her that she must wear it at all times and putting it on a thong around her neck, she said it was to protect her from evil forces. Now, returning to the journey, the black Nubian slave walked beside Jubidah's horse and somehow guided her away from the troop of maidens and the old crone. And as they were traveling, the Nubian slave would say to Jubidah, "Alight from your horse and let me ride." But as soon as she said this, the blue stone would reply, "Keep walking, dark woman." And so the journey went on, and each time the Nubian slave asked Jubidah to alight from her horse, the stone would reply in the same way. But as it happened, they came to a stream to drink, and as Jubidah leant over to take of the water, the stone around her neck fell off into the stream. Now again, when they were on the horse on their way, and the black slave asked Jubidah to alight, now there was only the faint voice, which soon faded as they moved along. So there came a point when the black slave demanded that Jubidah alight and took her place. Now, as it happened, they came to a lime kiln, and at that time the black slave covered herself in the limestone, which made her as white as the driven snow, and she forced Jubidah to cover herself in the soot from the fire of the lime kiln, so that when they arrived, as they did, and found themselves at the palace of the awaiting prince, of course, the prince thought that this being of white was indeed his bride-to-be, Jubidah, and the other, the black slave. So the prince took the lime dust-covered woman as his bride, and Jubidah was made to be a servant, taking sheep and goats to pasture each day. Now each day when Jubidah went to the grassland to feed the animals, she bewailed her fate, importuning all that is to hear her cries. What fate, destiny had rained upon her, asking, please, won't you, the elements, the birds of the sky, the animals, the streams, to let her parents know of her fate. And because it was as it was, the sheep and the goats wept with Jubidah, so that in their weeping they did not graze. So it was noted when they came back to the barns in which they were housed, that instead of growing fat and fleecy, they grew thinner and thinner. And so the prince, noticing this, wondered why it was so, and in making inquiry decided that he would find out for himself. So he followed Jubidah and the flocks of sheep and goats, and he heard the bewailing, the lamentation of Jubidah, and he sensed that something was severely amiss. So, following what came to him, we might call it intuition, he went back to his palace, and he demanded that his now wife bathe in hot water. She refused, but when made to do so, the limestone covering was washed away to reveal the darkness within. So immediately the prince cast her to the fire, in which the water in which she bathed was heated. The very next day he had Jubidah brought to him and requested that she be sent to the bathhouse, where of course all the soot that had covered her beauty and her purity was washed away to reveal her true self, her true beauty. We know the end of the story. Jubidah and the prince were wedded. Seeing, no longer seeing with the aid of our senses, our mind. And endeavoring to answer the question, how does this permanent state of seeing, knowing that we can no longer go back to it being the way it was before, relate to the ever-changing realities of life, the challenges, the questions, the decisions that constitute life, existence, as was known. In other words, how do we bring together permanency and impermanency? Stories containing the mysteries hidden in plain sight until we're in this state of seeing. What say you? How are you seeing this story? And how, which is our coming challenge, to express it, to interpret it with this sight. Jubidah.